Hello and welcome to another brand new episode of the Empower Men One podcast. Today I have with me a lovely, wonderful friend of mine, Claire, who is a poet, an author, yoga teacher, many different things, but has also been on a bit of a journey with her health recently over the past couple of years. And I've invited Claire on to share a little bit about us, with us, her story, what she's been turning to, things that she's discovered along that path, and hopefully there'll be something that you can take that's of inspiration or perhaps nuggets of gold that you might not have got elsewhere. So welcome, Claire. It's always amazing to have you on and to chat to you. What can you tell us about your story with your health so far? What's your journey been like over the past couple of years, and where's it taken to you? Where has it taken you to now?
Hey, Lizzie. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's really exciting to be here. And I've been watching you have amazing conversations with people and felt very inspired by that. So yeah, it's really exciting for me to be here and to have a voice and actually just have connection with someone about health, because sometimes it can be a really lonely journey. So this is super important. Yeah, my health, I would say in general, through my life, and I've reached the golden age of 50. Through my life, I've been really lucky to say that I have had very few health problems. I've never really had any stays in hospital. I've never been diagnosed with anything particularly. I've never taken any medications. So I feel very grateful for that. And I've been acknowledging that recently. The only thing I've ever really had in terms of a hospital stay was tonsillitis and removing my tonsils, which was probably about 7-8 years ago now. So that was quite late in life. But yeah, other than that, I don't suffer with any particular long-term diagnosis or anything like that until around about 2018, we're talking, I got diagnosed with a uterine fibroid. So this is a benign tumor in the womb. And I'd never heard of this before. Like my kind of gynecological health, my reproductive health was usually pretty straightforward. So I was pretty shocked. And the way that I had discovered it was literally by feeling it. I could sense that there was something that didn't feel quite right in my tummy, quite literally. So I was lying on my back, for instance, in bed, and I was like, I can feel something like a mass, and that's really scary in the moment. And I obviously the first thing you do is go to your GP. And I went to my GP and I was very scared. I was very nervous, I can remember. And I said, I can feel something in my belly and I'm really worried about it. And it feels big and it feels hard. Obviously had a examination. And of course, initially the doctors can't go, hey, I know what that is, and reassure you. They pretty much have to say, yes, I can feel something. Yes, it feels like quite a large mass. We need to send you off for a pelvic ultrasound. So I got that booked in and did it all quite quickly, didn't put anything off. Managed to get that appointment, went with my partner. I was really nervous, had the scan, and was I probably in my anxiety was expecting the worst. And of course, all the things that were coming up in my mind were taking me to the ultimate worst case scenario. Like I'm thinking, is this a cancerous lump? Is this ovarian cancer? Is this, all of the things. So when the nurse said, yes, I can see what this is. This is a fibroid. This is a uterine fibroid. And I said, what's that? And she said, it's a benign tumor that can occur in the womb, and it's very common. So there was a big relief, but then I was also left with this kind of, okay, so this isn't life-threatening. And obviously I asked lots of questions, but it's there. So now what do I do? So that's been my journey, really, from that diagnosis of kind of feeling the huge relief that someone wasn't telling me that this is life-threatening, that this isn't going to spread. But nonetheless, the attitude or the approach of gynecology is, this is a problem and it needs to be dealt with. And so the next stage is to then kind of put you in touch and have a deeper meeting about that to give you all the solutions. So that's kind of, to put you in the picture, that's where I've been with my health. And obviously there's then the journey that I took from finding out what the solutions were. So I could probably pause there.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we'll come on to those later, because I know that you had a journey in and of itself, just going through the solutions and what was available to you. So, I mean, you said that like in the moment you felt scared when you could feel and sense that there was something there. Often there's a case in health where we look back and we think about what could have added up to that situation. Particularly, I know in cancers where they say, if a tumor's got so big, and obviously yours wasn't an active tumor and a malignant tumor, but if a lesion's got so big, it needs to have started off somewhere. When you look back at the time previous to that, was there anything that made you think something's not quite right, or was that the first moment where you thought, hang on, there's something in here?
No, there had been, and like you say, you can kind of suddenly have this quite fast catch up, like flashes in my mind were like, and it was like I'm putting a jigsaw puzzle together. That's why this was happening, that's why that was happening. I certainly felt that I was heavier than I felt normally. So back then I was going to the gym really regularly. I was a real active, fit person. I used to absolutely love doing big challenges. So I was a cyclist. I used to go on the road cycling, did many challenges, long road trip, London to Paris was one of them, that year or the year before, I think it was. And I noticed with my fitness, because I was at David Lloyd, I was you can go on these machines and they'll analyze everything for you. I mean, I wouldn't do that now, but back then that's what I was attached to. And it was telling me that I was slowly gaining weight. And I was thinking, how can this be? Like, I'm so committed to my fitness. I am chucking out, 80 miles sometimes in a week. And I'm, doing stuff in the gym. I'm spinning, I'm doing yoga. I was doing kind of vinyasa yoga at the time, hot yoga at the time. None of it added up. And then my monthly cycle was markedly different. So my cycle had always been really straightforward. I'm lucky enough to say that it never really bothered me. It was very regular, not particularly heavy. But I got to the point where I was what they call flooding. And that means that there's so much blood that you pretty much have to stop what you're doing and get to the nearest bathroom. And it was awful. And I remember thinking, what on earth is happening to me? Why is this happening? It's really strange, like how heavy this is. And then you start to say, well, I'm getting older. So maybe that's what just happens, just starts to change. So yeah, there were certain things my body was talking to me that as soon as I got the diagnosis, I was like, that makes sense.
And what do you mean by that? Your body was talking to you?
Well, I'd say since my diagnosis, I've been on such a journey, and I've trained as a yoga teacher. I was already very passionate about practicing yoga. Pretty much as soon as I started vinyasa yoga, it took me down a really powerful journey of becoming much more aware of myself and aware of my breath and aware of just getting still, and how powerful that was when I did. And what that allowed me to do was to pay more attention, really. And if we pay attention, our bodies are speaking to us all the time. So the kind of the warning signal was the cycle. And there was a bit of shock involved in that. Maybe I needed to wake up, listen, something's happening here. This is not normal, and it did literally, it would stop me in my tracks. So that's what I mean by the body's listening. The body's talking, are you listening, I suppose.
And you mentioned about your anxiety sort of threw you into this worst case scenario, or as I like to call it, catastrophizing situation, where the mind goes to every single the worst places that could happen, even though we know that so many of those are very unlikely, but it's impossible almost in that moment not to let that happen. What, if anything, what was it that you found that helped you to stay grounded and stay rooted in what you knew rather than what you didn't know?
I would say the only thing that could take me out of the worry space was my yoga practice. And I began a meditation practice as well. Probably from 2019, I started taking interest in meditation. I joined an amazing one-day event in London that kind of kicked it off for me, that made me realize the power of meditation, with a guy called Jeff Foster. It was really, really inspiring. And from that moment, I was like, I know I need to meditate, and I just don't really know where to start, because it's quite a sort of, it's quite a thing to just sit down on your own and meditate. And I would try things at night and YouTube and things like that. And in 2020, I started a regular practice, and that was every single morning. And that gave me the space, that gave me breathing space, really. And that always made me feel that everything was okay. It made me stop and say, what is actually wrong in this moment? In this moment right now, there's nothing wrong. Like, nothing is any different. Yes, I have a benign tumor in my womb, but what is actually different today than it was yesterday, or it will be tomorrow? So it brought me back to the present moment, rather than what I was doing was, one, I was going back. And like you said earlier, we can instantly kind of come to that point of like, how long has this been there? How long has it taken for this to grow? And in a way, I thought, what have I done wrong to make this happen? So I went instantly to shame and embarrassment and a kind of touch of guilt. Then my mind was projecting forwards and worrying about how it would be removed, how it would go away. And then all the fear around that, of what that might mean.
A lot to take on, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're carrying it.
Yeah. And so subconsciously at the same time, that I think it kind of permeates everything, even with us not necessarily knowing that that's happening at the same time. It's very draining, I've found personally, so I can definitely relate.
Yes.
I wondered, you said, when you were told that it was a fibroid, rather than a cancer, and that it was benign and not malignant, that you had this sense of relief, but there wasn't relief at the same time, because you said, that I'm conscious that there's something inside of me and what happens, and that is absolutely something that I relate to with my health as well. I mean, where was it that you went from there? Where was it that you went from, okay, this thing is inside of me, and I've got to do something about it? Like, where did that take you?
I would say initially I let it be external. So I didn't really pay too much attention to what I could do in that moment. What could I do? I knew I was already practicing yoga and, learning about breath work and doing meditation. And I knew that was all good, and that was going to stay the same. But essentially, I was relying on the medical system. I was kind of, in a way, saying, I feel a bit lost with this and a bit helpless. who's going to help me? Who can fix it? Like, kind of looking around me going, who's here to help me? Come on, someone make this go away, please, because I don't want to make it go away. Like, what am I going to do? Because I had the theory, and I'm thinking, yeah, yoga, yes, hot yoga, absolutely. We've got to shift stuff out of the body. This is an energetic thing. What about breath work? What about Reiki healing? What about, all the myriad of things out there? But the doubt in me was stronger. The doubt was like, yeah, but how's that stuff going to actually shift this thing, And that's twice I've said this thing, so you might have noticed that. And I've done that deliberately because that's where I was. And now I don't refer in that way. In fact, I'll speak about that later, but there's a marked change that I've made in terms of my thoughts and my language. But I was looking externally and desperately thinking, I need somebody to come and help me. I need someone to make this go away. So I was going down the external route, obviously got referred from that scan to have a gynecology appointment, sat in a gynecology appointment with a lovely lady who'd suffered with them herself. So she was speaking from experience. And she pretty much said to me, we don't know what causes them. No one really knows. And meanwhile, I'm deep down thinking, yeah, we do. Come on. Surely we must know, surely. She mentioned about excess estrogen, so a dominance of estrogen in the body, and not necessarily the kind of estrogen that we want. More estrogen from the environment that causes an excess in the body. So I took that on and kind of made a mental note of that. And then really her options to me were, you can try these different options, which are invasive, but less invasive than surgery, but they won't actually fully get rid of it. And if they do, it'll probably come back. And I'm sat there thinking, what? And so she said, she said that she'd had surgery. So the two routes of surgery back then were a myomectomy, which means them going in keyhole and removing the actual tumor, but fixing the womb as such, so a repair, or a hysterectomy, where they would go in and just take the whole thing out, and your womb, maybe your ovaries too. And that her words to me were, the only way to guarantee that this thing goes for good is to have a hysterectomy. And she said, and I had a myomectomy, and it was a horrible operation. It was really, really painful, a terrible recovery. And guess what? They grew back a year later. I was like, that sounds great. I feel fantastic now. And then the other options she was giving were sort of, what was that one called? Uterine embolization or something like that. And they go in through the major artery in your groin with like a fine instrument. They come up through that major artery, and then they kind of go into the fibroid to destroy the cells and the tissue and the blood supply. But there are many risks with that. Lots of women talk about having sciatica afterwards, and like nasty side effects where it starts breaking down inside you. So yeah, I walked out of that appointment thinking, well, it sounds like my only option is to have a hysterectomy, which I then considered and I then booked in for.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah. I so want to jump in at every single moment, and I will stop myself. But I think what you said is so interesting about we have these options and we think great options, and then it's like everything has its caveat, everything has its side effect, and that case of like not knowing which one, or it's like, will someone else just choose one for me? Someone tell me black and white what's the best thing for me to do, which I think so many listeners and patients watching this back, particularly with MEN1, will understand, because it's a constant case of which either or, like, which one do I do?
Yeah.
So where are you now with everything? What's the kind of the 411 on the present state of your health?
Well, I didn't go for the hysterectomy. I had one booked, and I think it was within days of having that, which I was very, very nervous about. And I had a full body, almost confirmation that it wasn't the right thing to do. I felt that through my whole body, was like, no, 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 I don't want to go for that surgery. And technically it would have been keyhole, but you never know. You can go in having keyhole and wake up, and they've said, sorry about that, but we had to just kind of open you right up, and now you've got this massive scar and da da da. And there was a part of me deep down that knew that it wasn't really the solution. It wasn't really the full healing that I needed. And so where I'm at now is I feel that I have taken back my power and gone in. And I think the turning point for me was realizing that I was leaking my power, if you like. I was leaking my energy by telling everyone about it. So this is the key factor for me. I put it out there so much with the people that I love and that I know, and friends that I trust, and they love me, and there's no question in that two-way love. But the fact that I was putting it out there as a kind of, oh my God, it's a nightmare, I've got this big thing, and hysterectomy, and I don't know that to have it, meant that it was an open subject for everybody to discuss, everybody to give me their opinion. And, quite literally, they would say, well, if I was you, I would XYZ. Understandably, because everybody's got their own approach to something, everybody's got their own filter on something. What I didn't realize I was doing was just like leaking my power by doing that, because I couldn't hear myself. All I could hear was, friends and family saying, my God, if I had something like that, I'd have whipped that out ages ago. Oh, I'd hate to think of that thing inside me. Eesh, I don't know how you're coping with it. Why don't you just have a hysterectomy? It's absolutely fine. I've had people say, oh, I had a hysterectomy and it was absolutely fine. I was recovered within a week and it's really no big deal. It's nothing to be scared of, Claire. Why are you holding back? To the point where it then added more guilt onto me, because I felt there was something wrong with me. I was like, what's wrong with me? Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm just like, maybe I don't love myself enough to solve this. That's how I was filtering it for myself. And I was like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Why am I holding back on this solution that's right in front of me? I could have a hysterectomy. The point that I took my power back was to research and look at other options. And actually, I really took a chance for one thing, and then I pushed it for another. So rather than just look at the gynecological team and look at the options they were giving me, I had done my own research, and I found out about another treatment that was less invasive, and reached out to be referred to this particular consultant. So I'm lucky enough to live in Oxford. We have teaching hospitals here. We're pretty lucky. So I was like, I need to take advantage of that. And I found a consultant that was doing a project with a machine called a HIFU, which is a high intensity focused ultrasound machine that was on loan to the Churchill Hospital from China. And this team were using it to trial not only fibroids for women, but prostate cancer for men and pancreatic cancer, which is notoriously difficult to treat. So it's a similar kind of effect of radiotherapy, but without the radio bit. So you can have as many rounds as you like. It's gentle, it's non-invasive to a point. There's no surgery, there's no cutting, but it does use heat. So I've had 2 rounds of that, which has been hugely beneficial. And I would say that where I'm at now is I've let go of the need to control it. I'm allowing it to be there. I'm not attaching to it too much. And I'm just, rather than feeling negative about it and thinking, ugh, this needs to go away, I'm giving it compassion. And in a way, I'm saying, it's okay. It's okay that you're there. And I let go of that need to get rid of it, because what does that mean anyway? So yeah, I could say loads more on that in terms of stuff that's happened recently on a more energetic level. So it depends how much, what you want to go into.
Actually, you brought us to a fantastic point. You mentioned earlier that you used to refer to the fibroid as that thing or it, or something in the almost like a sort of demonstrative pronoun kind of thing, and I wondered, and you don't do that, anymore. You say you don't do that anymore. I wondered what was behind that, and what is it that made you change the way that you approached it, just in your vocabulary and potentially probably in your mind as well.
I think that would have been, once I took my power back, I started to look much more holistically at myself as a whole person. And at the time I was in an intensive training for yoga. So I was training to be a yoga teacher, which I know you've done as well. We were on the same program, which was amazing. And clearly that was a stripping back of layers, layers of yourself, things that you tell yourself that aren't true, the stories that you hold. And that sent me on a journey of really starting to understand myself on a deeper level, and then starting to have this much broader view of things started to drop in. And I was like, once I started to train in the yoga, which is on an energetic level, a physical level, a mental level, an emotional level, it fascinated me. So from an anatomical point of view and an energetic anatomical point of view, that flicked a light bulb. This was all happening alongside it, really, but it just deepened as I went along. And what I really started to understand was, never mind the manifestation as it is right now. Okay, fine, that's there. But I started to understand what happened to me emotionally and energetically a very long time ago, that then caught up with myself in a physical manifestation. And that's what I learned. And that's what I came to terms with. I was like, I know why that's there. I know what that represents. It goes way beyond a gynecological appointment to say, we don't really know why that's there. I think it's just, estrogen. I don't need to tell them what I know. But for me, by going inwards and doing that inner work, I now understand what that's about. And then as soon as I understood and made the connection, I knew the only work that needed to be done was to give it compassion and love. And therefore, to stop labor. I don't even really call it a fibroid anymore. I try to detach from the label and just say, it's my womb. I have a womb, yeah. And I'm healing my womb. And so I don't refer to it in that way anymore. I only show it love. I only give my womb love, because that's where the wounding was, or is.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because I'm, as I say, similar place myself, and it's so easy to look at these health crises as our enemy somehow, or as something really negative, or something to hate. I think hatred is the word that comes to mind, and all we know is that there's nothing positive that can spring from hatred ever. So I think that's a really, really beautiful thing that you've shared with us. I have one final question before we finish up, because would you believe it, we're nearly at half an hour.
Oh, we could do 5 hours probably, you and me.
Honestly, we could. If you could go back to a version of yourself at any point in your health journey, maybe it's diagnosis, or maybe it was, deciding which, option to take in terms of treatment, or any point that stands out to you, and you could give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, yeah, I would go back to tell myself, stop broadcasting it just for a minute and say to myself, I know that you're scared. I know you feel alone. And so you're looking for connection. You're looking to not be alone in this. But actually, by telling too many people, family and friends, and looking for their opinions and their advice, which lovingly they gave you, you're actually making yourself more alone, because what they're telling you isn't what you want to hear anyway, because you're the only one. You've got everything you need. All the answers are right inside of you. So if you just zip it and carry on that meditation work, you're going to find the answers. And the only way you can do that is to get quiet. And that's been, so going back to we tend to look at health crisis as a negative thing. I've started to say thank you to my womb and for this opportunity, because it's given me such a huge amount of learning. And I wouldn't be where I am now if that hadn't manifested in my body to say, hey, there's something here that needs to be seen, because that's all it is. I mean, is there any coincidence that I grew, or a fibroid grew to quite a large size? A lot of women have smaller ones, but I decided to, mine grew quite large. Is it any coincidence that it needed to get that large to get my attention? And then the biggest lesson from it is to go within and stop leaking your energy, which has taught me to do that across the rest of my life as well. In other areas of my life, that same lesson, I'm like, oh, there it is again. Oh gosh. And that doesn't mean that I don't want friendships and I don't want valuable conversation with people, but it's more, I don't necessarily need to solicit advice. I might want to share how I'm feeling at that point, but it's not a victim kind of, I really need your help, I'm lost. It's more, yeah, I'm feeling a bit fed up today, but it'd be fine because I'm working on, XYZ. Does that make sense?
It does indeed. Complete sense. Claire, I can't thank you enough for coming and so generously sharing about your story. And yeah, as I say, I always love chatting to you because I think you have such an amazing perspective on things. And I hope that anyone listening back is also able to take some inspiration from you and your journey. If anyone wants to reach out and find you, because obviously you teach yoga, and we didn't get on to talking about this, you are a poet and you do some amazing writing. Where is best for people to find you?
Probably Instagram is a good place to start, and that is Claire_inlight. Yeah, you can find me there.
Super.
And then within there's all my links to various other things like websites and Facebook and stuff like that. But Instagram's the best. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you again, Claire. And yours, I think, is a voice that we'll want to have back on at some point. Thank you very much indeed. And wishing you all the best with the continuation of your healing journey.
Thank you so much, Lizzie. Thank you so much for having me and listening and, yeah, providing the space. It's so important to create that space.